Good afternoon, everybody. It is Monday, and I hope everybody has had a blessed day today. Welcome to He Set Me Free. My name is Robert. It's been a couple days since my last upload, so I just kind of figured I'd stop by, say hi, and I hope everybody is having a great time out on the roads now that summertime's here. One thing that I've noticed in recent days that there's been an uptick in rides. I knew all I had to do was get through May. I knew once I got through May and we got into summer that everything would be fine, and sure enough it was. That's not without saying that there's been a lot of driving involved. I have found myself staying out on the roads longer just for the simple fact that what I used to do doesn't work anymore. Typically I would have my total earnings by 9, 10 o'clock. Now I'm having to stay out till 12 or 1. I'm also having to take rides that I typically would not take, just for the simple fact that I'm trying to keep my acceptance rating high, both on Uber and, well, I started driving for Uber again because Lyft just wasn't meeting my needs, and I'm going to talk about that here in a second. Well, let me rephrase that. Lyft is, but it isn't. I've noticed some strange parallels whenever it comes to Lyft. And subsequently, those same kind of parallels I see in Uber too. They are literally almost identical. And today, I really saw those parallels. Yesterday, I primarily drove for Lyft, or for Uber, because I couldn't get any decent rides on Lyft, and there is a reason for that, which I will explain now. In recent weeks, I've noticed a very specific trend and pattern with Lyft. And what I've noticed is if you have a really good week, expect the following week not to look so great. Something else that I noticed too with day one on Lyft was I had 7 rides on Lyft. 3 of those rides, they took over half. 3 other rides, maybe I had 8. 3 other rides, they took 40% or higher. At least it was actually right around 43%. And then I had 2 rides that they took about 38%, 35 to 38%. As I went and I really studied the numbers, the rides that they took the most on was the rides that I traveled the most on. But subsequently, one ride I was really shocked that they didn't take a whole lot out of. And that was a $22 and some change to me. It was the other rides that kind of threw me off. So what it appears is they kind of split up the day between what Lyft takes and what they take out in external fees. And then other times they'll throw me a bone or two. But I first noticed it the week before last, where I had a $649 week. Now when Sunday rolled around, the rides got really bad. I mean, that we're talking about all rides were under $5. I was very perturbed that day as a result, because I noticed a pattern that Lyft was not going to allow me to reach $700. Well, subsequently, this week I hit $749 on Lyft. Yesterday, I had 3 rides. And they were not great rides at all. Saturday, I had a trip down to Austin, a trip to DFW, a trip while I was at DFW, and locally I had 2 rides. I had a great day, but I put a lot of miles on my car Saturday, but I needed the money. Car payments due on the 20th. I was hoping that this week would have been another week like last week was. No. Today I only made 60 before tip. I had one person tip, and the rest of them were the 10% bonus things. I think it was $66, yeah. Because on Uber I made $63, and I had another trip down to Temple with Uber yesterday. Now, what I've noticed is Uber has a tendency to pay very well long distance. Lyft does not. The trip down to Austin on Saturday paid $131, but what they charged that passenger was $213. They paid me $130. They took $80 from that ride. On the trip to Dallas, they paid me $91, but they charged the passenger $141. Yeah. And then the trip that I got up there, they paid me $13 or $15. I think it was $13. And they charged the passenger $33 from the airport. They took 68% of that ride, if I remember correctly. So whenever you go in and you analyze your rides, you will notice certain rides that they take an excessive amount, other rides they do not. But like today, the rides that I did have on Lyft, they stuck me with a string of short rides. And what that tells me, they were trying to slow down my earnings because of that $22 ride that I had. At one point, my earnings was skyrocketing. But then they sent me a string of short rides. They kept me in the downtown, slightly north Waco area. This area is a dead zone for Uber drivers, meaning you are not going to make that much money. This is what the area that they stuck me in today was the area that they put me in the Saturday before last, or 2 Saturdays ago. You're not going to make any kind of money in those areas. They are very short trips, and that's just the way that it is. With that being said, Uber yesterday and today seem to pay a little bit better, but the one thing I can say without a shadow of a doubt, the miles that you drive, the minutes inside that trip, and the 75-cent connection fee, Uber does pay. You can actually do the math, and you will see exactly what Uber's charging. You are not going to get any excess at all. With Lyft, on the other hand, I don't know how they come up with, I have tried to figure out the formula that they use. It's mind-boggling. It's almost impossible to figure that out. I don't know how they do it. But there's something very shady about it, to be quite honest. But I've had to start incorporating Uber again into my drive time because that's the only way that I'm going to make a decent earning. With that being said, I made just my cut, not anything else. I made $137. I drove 147 miles today, so that's actually not too bad. That puts me in the 90 cent, about 85, 90 cent, no, 90 cent per mile that I drove, minus the trip coming back from Temple. So the math kind of works out a little bit, with the exception on that's total though, with the exception of Lyft, with them taking 58%, 54%, 53% of 3 rides, and then the 40%, so on and so forth. So Uber kind of balanced it out a little bit today, and I was truly blessed. But there was something else that I noticed too whenever I got onto Lyft's app the other day. They changed their flags. They said, at least on the top of mine, it says 4 flags, and you want less than 4 flags. I'm not quite sure. Keep your car clean for service flags. Now, we all know, if you've been driving for Lyft for a while, that they can do service flags if you cancel a ride. It'll cost you a service flag. They can pretty much add a service flag for anything, plus the passenger too. Because they won't go into specific detail about why they're giving you a service flag. They kind of hide that information. It's kind of like with when Lyft or Uber hit you with an acceptance point for no reason because they don't have flags. Uber will hit you with an acceptance point, like I've talked about in a previous video, if you are getting too many rides. They will take an acceptance point to slow your earnings down. And you'll go from ride to a trickle at best. Lyft does the exact same thing. So once I hit a dead spot today with Lyft, I immediately got on Uber. Because at one point I sat for almost 20 minutes on Lyft and I didn't get any rides. And I'm like, you know what, screw this. Let's get on Uber. And it was pretty steady with Uber. I didn't travel on Uber like I did on Lyft today. Lyft will try to use your gas up. Make no qualms about it. They will try to do it, especially if you use the Lyft card and they can track your gas purchases. They will try to use your gas up. Subsequently, whenever I filled up down in Austin, I got that trip to Dallas, and then I went ahead and tried to get see if I could get a ride at DFW Airport. Got that ride, had to come back and put more gas in my car, $60 worth of gas that day, because I had put 30 in down in Austin. Not to mention the 3/4 of a tank that I had, or no, it was a little over half a tank that I used going down to Austin. So yeah, that I had put in the day before. So I need a drink coffee. So that's what they do. If you find yourself running here and there and everywhere on Lyft, think back to, did I put gas in my car today? More than likely, and if you use the Lyft card, more than likely, they've tracked your gas. Now, on the flip side of that, if you don't use the Lyft card and you're wondering why you're not getting many rides, that's why. They cannot track your gas purchases. If you fill up before you go home, expect a busy day the next day. It's going to happen. Without a shadow of a doubt, it's going to happen. Uber, what they'll do is if you don't use the Uber card, they'll track. If your GPS isn't off inside your phone, they'll physically track you while you're moving around Waco or wherever you live. And if you happen to stop off at a gas station, get ready. If you're there for any length of time, they will suspect that you put gas in your car, and then all of a sudden you'll start, and it can work in your favor, you'll start getting a whole bunch of rides. Because a couple years ago, back whenever I had the Uber card, it without fail, every time I put gas in my car, within 3 rides, I got a trip to Dallas. And it got to the point to where I was making 4 and 5 trips to Dallas a week. That's how bad it got. And I quit using that card. And the long distance trips stopped. So, that's just a little bit more proof. It wasn't by happenstance. And sometimes, as soon as I filled up my tank, I would get a long distance trip carrying something up to DFW Airport or Love Field. So just keep in mind, whenever you're out on the roads, about gas, about Lyft trying to use up all your gas. Be mindful that if you look at your earnings at the end of the day and you're like, man, they take a lot of money. That's the way that they work. Uber, we can't see that information, but on Lyft, you can. My spreadsheet, it tells the tales. So, which is why I'm teaching myself coding and making a career change. It's time to do something different. So, I mean, I've talked about these companies. They are shady, both of them. but I've extensively talked about Lyft and the things that I've noticed. And it's time to start setting some goals. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Be safe out on those roads. Remember everything that I've talked about, y'all. And until next time, y'all be blessed.